And our check. Alrighty. So welcome to this playoff preview video. This will just be a relatively short run through of each series. We'll take a look at each of the rosters left over on all of the teams, and we'll go through. The last video I did was a big long rundown of all the stats and standings after the first season. We'll just do some brief little things here, so like points leaders, goal leaders, and the starting goalies for each team going into the playoffs. So here is your tree as you see it there. We'll start from left to right on the western side here, right at the top. First up, marked up there. They kind of have it laid out a little weird. I would like to have the best teams on the top, but they're kind of at the bottom, so whatever. We'll read it off as they have them done. That first matchup there, the Colorado Avalanche versus the Dallas Stars. Dallas second in the Central Division. Dallas third. Second and third there, Colorado versus Dallas. There's the matchup there. The top team in the Central, the St. Louis Blues, face off against the top wildcard team in the West, the Anaheim Ducks. The second best team in the Pacific, the second and third best teams in the Pacific, LA and the Las Vegas Golden Thrashers of Atlanta face off there. The President's Trophy winning Edmonton Oilers face off against the second wildcard team in the West, the Winnipeg Jets. Over on the east side, our Metro Division battle, second and third, the Pittsburgh Penguins and the New York Islanders. The top team in the Metro, the Washington Capitals, and the top wildcard team, the Montreal Canadiens. Second and third in the Atlantic, the Buffalo Sabres and the Detroit Red Wings. And the Eastern Conference winning Boston Bruins facing off against the second wildcard team, the Ottawa Senators. So we'll take a look at the Colorado-Dallas matchup first off. I went back and took a look at the matchups between each team, each playoff matchup, how they did in the regular season. So in this one, the Colorado Avalanche and the Dallas Stars. Dallas won 3 out of 4 games, one game of those wins going into a shootout. So Dallas winning 3 of 4 over Colorado here. We'll take a look first at the Colorado roster since I have them pulled up. Peter Forsberg is the leading goal scorer for them with 27 goals in the season. Alex Tanguay has 71 points as their points leader. You see their forward line here. They've been mixing around a little bit since the start of the season. So if you watched my very first roster reveal video, I've moved some lines around for each team, and what we're showing now is the amended lines since the start of the season going into the playoffs for these playoff teams. I've tried to keep most everything the same, or at least the same sort of setup as I had the first time, but some stuff just kind of needed to be changed to give the team their best chance of doing well, especially with these Avalanche. They started off struggling. Made a couple of changes with them, and they found themselves in the playoffs. So here's their lineup here. Joe Sakic centering Valerie Kamensky and Peter Forsberg is their top line. Peter Stastny with Michel Goulet and Alex Tanguay. Nathan McKinnon with Gabriel Landeskog and Milan Hajduk. And a fourth line of Matt Duchene, Adam Deadmarsh, and Claude Lemieux. On defense for the Avalanche, Sandis Ojolitz and Rob Blake. John Michael Lyles and Eric Johnson. Curtis Lecision and Adam Foote. In goal for the Colorado Avalanche is Patrick Waugh. He played 72 games in the regular season with a .902 save percentage in the regular season. The backup Semyon Varlamov didn't play a whole lot. That 99 overall for Patrick Waugh kind of gave him control of the net, regardless of his performance. As long as he stayed over 900, didn't have a disaster, he was always going to hang on to this net. And that 902 through the regular season could be a bit of a lying in wait for Patrick Waugh here. If he picks up his game in the playoffs, this could be a cup for them to lose. I could have stayed right in that screen. Moving on now to their opponents, the Dallas Stars. So we'll take a look at their forward group. They are led by their top points leader with 83 points on the season, Brett Hull. Dino Ciccarelli is their top goal scorer with 32 goals on the season. Their lines have mostly stayed the same, I believe. Pretty sure they have, actually. Top line, Tyler Seguin, Jamie Benn, and Brett Hull. Mike Modano centering Brian Bellows and Dino Ciccarelli. Joe Nieuwendyk with Brendan Morrow and Jamie Langenbrunner. And Neil Broughton with Bill Goldsworthy and Yuri Lettinen. On defense for the Stars, Darian Hatcher and John Klingberg, Daryl Sador and Sergei Zubov, Richard Matvichuk, and Trevor Daley. A bit of a change in net for the Dallas Stars. Eddie Belfour started off as the starter for this team, but Marty Turco has since taken over the net. He put up a .918 save percentage in 42 games played. Eddie Belfour starting in 43, so this is a tandem pretty much for the whole season. I'll keep an eye on them through these playoffs as well. If we notice Turco struggling, we'll definitely make that switch back to Belfour since the season was taken over by both of these goaltenders. Expect a bit of a tandem setup for Belfour, but Marty Turco will get the start for Game 1. So that's the Colorado Avalanche versus the Dallas Stars. Moving on now to the matchup of the St. Louis Blues and the Anaheim Ducks. We'll start off with the top team in the Central. The St. Louis Blues starting from the net. Curtis Joseph has been their starter for most of the season. 75 games played, in fact, for Joseph with a .917 save percentage for him. He'll get the start in Game 1 against the Ducks. Their lines have pretty much stayed the same for them as well. Pavel Demitra is their top point scorer with 80 points on the season. Vladimir Tarasenko, the top goal scorer, with 34. Lines here: Pierre Turgeon with Pavel Demitra and Brett Hull. Bernie Ferducco with Keith Tkachuk and Vladimir Tarasenko. David Backes with Alex Steen and Joe Mullen. Gary Unger with Brian Sutter and Red Berenson. On defense, that top pair of Chris Pronger and Al MacInnis. Barrett Jackman and Alex Pietrangelo. And the Plager brothers, Bob and Barclay Plager. Before we go on to the Anaheim Ducks, I'll mention this was a pretty even series throughout the playoffs. Only 3 games played for these conference teams not in the same division. 1 win for Anaheim in overtime, 1 win from Anaheim in a shootout, and then a win from St. Louis. That was only a 1-goal victory, so a very tight season series. We'll see if that transfers over into the playoffs. St. Louis will have home ice, of course, as the top team in the Central, but a very even matchup coming into this one. Take a look at the Anaheim Ducks now. They are led by Paul Kariya, both in points and goals. 88 points for Kariya and a league-leading 64 goals. The winner of the Rocket Richard through the regular season, Mr. Paul Kariya. Their lines have stayed the same throughout the season. Adam Oates centers Paul Kariya and Teemu Selanne. Ryan Getzlaff with Bobby Ryan and Corey Perry. Andy McDonald with Chris Kunitz and Jacob Silverberg. Steve Ruchin, Mike Leclerc, and Ricard Raquel rounds out their forward lines. On defense for the Ducks, Scott Niedermeyer and Chris Pronger. Bit of a Pronger versus Pronger here in the first round on St. Louis and Anaheim. Hampus Lindholm with Ruslan Saleh, and Francois Beauchemin with Cam Fowler. In net for the Ducks has been Jean-Sébastien Giguère. He's played in 69 games with a .905 save percentage for him. Of course, he's got that history of putting up some big numbers in the playoffs, so we'll see if he's able to, a bit similar to Waugh, improve his play in the postseason. Moving on now to the LA Kings and Las Vegas Golden Thrasher matchup. That series also very even as it gets. 4 games played between the two teams, both of them getting wins in regulation. An even series after 4 through the regular season. For the LA Kings, Jonathan Quick will get the start. He's played 42 games. 55, reading the wrong spot there. 55 games played for Jonathan Quick at a .900 save percentage. Rogie Vachon, noticed him there at the same overall number, but just didn't put up the save percentage necessary to take the net over from Jonathan Quick. So Quick will get the start in the playoffs here. The only Stanley Cup winning goaltender in this franchise's history. We'll move on to the playoffs for them. Their forward group, led by Zygmunt Palffy, 90 points, 42 goals, leads both categories for the LA Kings. He's playing on a line with Wayne Gretzky and Luc Robitaille to start off as their top line. The Triple Crown lines behind them: Marcel Dion, Charlie Simmer, and Dave Taylor. Andrei Kopitar, Bernie Nichols, and Dustin Brown. Butch Goring, Mike Murphy, and Jim Fox. On defense for the Kings, Lubomir Vishnowsky and Rob Blake. Alec Martinez and Drew Doughty. Steve Duchesne and Matthias Nordstrom. For the Cinderella story of the season, the Las Vegas Golden Thrashers of Atlanta, a team just kind of thrown together, started off really strong. They're at the top of the league, kind of fell off a little bit, but still hanging on there to the 3rd seed in the Pacific to get ready for this matchup against the LA Kings. They have been led all season long by Ilya Kovalchuk and Danny Heatley. Heatley has the lead in both goals and points, but Kovalchuk had that big assist lead as well. Heatley with 97 points, 54 goals on the season. He and Helia Kovalchuk are centered by William Karlsson. Behind them, Ray Ferraro with Max Pacioretty and Jonathan Marchessault. Thomas Nosek with Vyacheslav Kozlov and Riley Smith. Cody Eakin with Pierre-Edouard Belmar and Alex Tuck. On defense, for the Golden Thrashers, Shea Theodore, Nate Schmidt, Braden McNabb and Colin Miller, John Merrill and Derek Englund. In net, for the Golden Thrashers has been Marc-Andre Fleury, 75 games played. For Fleury, a .908 save percentage. He started off really strong with this team, and that kind of gave them that early advantage that they've kind of been using for the whole season. Marc-Andre Fleury, another one of those goaltenders who's known to pick it up in the playoffs. Not the best numbers of the regular season, but the matchup between he and Jonathan Quick should be a strong one. Two goaltenders with all kinds of playoff experience. We'll stay in the West for one final series. That is the series that stars the President's Trophy winners, the Edmonton Oilers, facing off against the Winnipeg Jets. Their series actually surprisingly is led by the Winnipeg Jets. They lead that series 2-1. Edmonton's only win coming in overtime, so a team Edmonton has been dominating most of the league, not dominating their playoff opponents here. They'll have to find a way to work their way around that coming into the playoffs here. Grant Fuhr will be their starter. 75 games played for him with a .907 save percentage. Bill Ranford, his backup. Up front, led, of course, by none other than Wayne Gretzky. He is the Art Ross winner for this season, 108 points. Also the goals leader for this team with 63. He is centering, of course, Esa Tikkanen and Jari Kurri. The line behind him, Connor McDavid, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and Leon Draisaitl. A third line centered by Mark Messier with Craig Simpson and Glenn Anderson. And a fourth line that has been putting up all kinds of points for the Oilers, Doug Weight, Ryan Smith, and Alesh Hemsky. On defense, Charlie Huddy and Paul Coffey, Kevin Lowe and Steve Stais, Marty McSorley and Jeff Bookaboom. Their opponents, the Winnipeg Jets, making their way into the playoffs on the final day of regular season, able to hang on to their spot. They will be led by Teemu Selanne in points, 79 points on the season for Selanne. Patrick Laine is their goals leader with 35. Dale Howardchuk centers the first line. He's got Keith Tkachuk and Teemu Selanne with him. Mark Scheifele with Patrick Laine and Blake Wheeler. A third line of Brian Little, Eddie Olczyk, and Nikolai Ehlers. And a fourth of Thomas Steen, Morris Lukowicz, and Paul McLean. On defense for the Jets, Dave Babbage, Dustin Byfuglien, Randy Carlyle with Frederick Olsson, Tobias Enstrom, and Dave Ellett. In net for the Jets, Connor Hellebuck has been the starter for the majority of the season. 73 games played for him with a .910 save percentage. Bob Essenza will be backing him up. And that does it for the West. I'll take a quick pause here just to give my predictions. I'm kind of doing these on the spot. But thinking of that first Colorado-Dallas series, Dallas had the advantage in the regular season. But I do think that Patrick Waugh, I mentioned in the earlier video as well that Joe Sakic had kind of underperformed in the regular season. I expect that not to continue in the playoffs. I could see Colorado taking that series against the Dallas Stars. If we're going to put a number on it, let's call it Colorado in 6. Sure, why not? For the St. Louis Blues and the Anaheim Ducks, the Blues a top seed in the Central. The Anaheim Ducks a wildcard team, but had a slight advantage over the St. Louis Blues with 2 wins in the regular season. Every game in that season series, this only decided by a goal, though. That's another tough one. I think the St. Louis Blues will take that one. And I don't think it's going to be as close as the regular season showed it could be. I'm going to say Blues in 5. Sure. For the LA Kings and Las Vegas Golden Thrashers of Atlanta, does the Cinderella story stop in round 1? The Kings have the 2nd seed in the Pacific. The Golden Thrashers have the 3rd. We're going to say that the Vegas magic continues, and it continues in a strong way. I'm going to say the Las Vegas Golden Thrashers of Atlanta will sweep the LA Kings. Got to have one bold sweep pick in there. That's mine. And for this series, we just talked about the Edmonton Oilers and the Winnipeg Jets, the President's Trophy winning Oilers against the Jets team that had their number in the regular season. 2 wins in 3 games for the Jets and dragging the Oilers to overtime in the game they lost. It's awfully hard to bet against that forward group of the Oilers, and I'm not going to. But I am going to say that the Jets are going to give them everything they have, and they're going to drag them all the way to Game 7. Oilers in 7. If these end up being all right, just assume I cheated, because I haven't cheated so far. Maybe I'm waiting until the playoffs to just get in there and totally rig everything to make myself look amazing in this little random preview video. Moving on now to the Eastern Conference. First one we talked about there is the Pittsburgh Penguins, second seed in the Metro, against the New York Islanders, the third seed. Season series here, 4 games played between these two teams. The New York Islanders winning 3 of those, one of which in a shootout. We'll take a look at the Pittsburgh Penguins. I debated it in the last video of maybe switching Tom Barrasso and Marc-Andre Fleury. For now, we're going to start with Barrasso for the simple reason he played 64 games. Not a big enough sample size, I think, for Fleury. And yes, I do have that little problem with having Marc-Andre Fleury start for 2 teams in this sim. But I will keep an eye on it, and if Barrasso stumbles, I'll quickly pull the trigger and put Fleury in there. But for now, Tom Barrasso will get the start. He's a .902 through 64 games. So take a look at their forward lines. They are, of course, led by Mario Lemieux. 86 points for Lemieux, their leader there, and 46 of those were goals. Leading in that category as well, he centers Ron Francis and Jaromir Jagr. Behind them, Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin with Joe Mullen. Martin Straka with Kevin Stevens and Alexei Kovalev. I always call him Alex. Anyway, that happens when I try to read names I already know. Silaps Jr. centers Rick Kehoe and Jean Pronovost. On defense for the Penguins, Paul Coffey and Larry Murphy. Darius Kasparaitis with Chris Letang. And Brooks Orpik with Ron Stackhouse. For the New York Islanders, 2 points leaders for them, tied at the top of the board. John Tavares and Mike Bossy both had 81 points on the season for the Islanders. Bossy leading the team in goals with 44. He's on the top line with Brian Trottier and Clark Gillies. That second line is centered by John Tavares. He has Pat LaFontaine and Kyle Okposo with him. Brent Sutter, Derek King, and Pat Flatley are the third line, with Bob Bourne, John Tonelli, and Bobby Nystrom behind them. On defense for the Islanders, Dennis and Jean Potvin, the 2 brothers on the first pair. Kenny Johnson and Ken Morrow, Thomas Hickey, and Travis Hamonic round out that D-core. In net, Billy Smith gets the start for the Islanders. He's played 74 games with a .910 save percentage coming into this one. Chico Resch backs him up. And moving on now to the Washington Capitals versus the Montreal Canadiens. The Washington Capitals, the top seed in the Metro Division, against the Montreal Canadiens, the first wildcard team. Season series here, 3 games played between these 2 clubs. The Montreal Canadiens winning 2 of those. The Canadiens and Capitals both needed shootouts and one of their games to get a victory there. So one one regulation win for the Canadiens is the only one that didn't need extra time there. So a close series coming in to this one. Braden Holtby will get the start for the Capitals. He's played 72 games in the season for a .907 save percentage. Up front for the Caps, Alex Ovechkin leads the way for them in goals and points. 87 points, 47 of those are goals. He's got Nick Backstrom and Peter Bondra with him. The second line, Adam Oates, Dennis Marouk, and Mike Gartner. Mike Ridley with Steve Konowalchuk and Ben-Aki Gustafsson. Dale Hunter, Kelly Miller, and Michael Pivonka are the fourth line. On defense for the Caps, Sergei Gonchar and John Carlson. Rod Langway and Larry Murphy. Al Iafrate and Kalle Johansson. Now for the Montreal Canadiens, Rocket Richard and Guy Lafleur leads them in points with 73 points each. And Rocket Richard, of course, will lead the team in goals with 43. Jean Beliveau centers Guy Lafleur and Bernie Boom Boom Geoffrion. Elmer Locke with Henry and Maurice Richard. Howie Morenz with Saku Koivu and Ivan Cournoyer. and a fourth line of Guy Carbonneau, Bob Gainey, and Steve Shutt. On defense for the Habs, Doug Harvey and Larry Robinson, Serge Savard and Butch Bouchard, Guy Lapointe, and Patrice Brisebois. In net for the Canadiens, none other than Jacques Plante. He has played 66 games on the season for a .910 save percentage. Over now to the Atlantic Division matchup. The Boston Bruins and, the Detroit Red Wings and the Buffalo Sabres. Season series here, perfectly tied, 2 games apiece. All 4 games happening in regulation. So it should be an even series here between the Red Wings and Sabres. Starting from the net for Detroit, Terry Sawchuk will get the start for them. 71 games played for him, a .902 save percentage. Up front for the Wings, Pavel Datsyuk leads the team in points with 68. Sergei Fedorov has the goal lead with 28. Top line for them will be their production line, Sid Abel with Ted Lindsay and Gordie Howe, Steve Yzerman with Sergei Fedorov and Brendan Shanahan, and Pavel Datsyuk with Hendrik Zetterberg and Alex Delvecchio, and a fourth line of Igor Larionov, Thomas Holmstrom, and Darren McCarty. On defense for the Red Wings, Nicholas Lidstrom with Chris Chelios, Mark Howe and Larry Murphy, Red Kelly, and Nick Cronwall. For the second seed in the Atlantic, the Buffalo Sabres. Up front, they are led by Pat LaFontaine, centering that first line. He leads them in points and goals, 63 points with 27 goals for LaFontaine. He centers Thomas Vanek and Danny Gare up front. Behind them, the French Connection line of Gilbert Perreault, Rick Martin, and René Robert. Behind them, Jack Eichel with Dave Andrechuk and Jason Pominville, Mike Pekka with Craig Ramsey and Mike Foligno. On defense for the Sabres, Phil Housley and Brian Campbell, Alexei Zhitnik and Mike Ramsey, William Hyde with Tyler Myers. Somebody's got to tell me how to pronounce that. I keep looking, I keep checking it, saying it, and then forgetting it. So one of these days it'll stay in there. And in goal for the Buffalo Sabres, of course, Dominik Hasek, likely a candidate for the Vezina Trophy this season. He led the league in save percentage with a .923 through 73 games played. The Dominator has been exactly that, dominant this season. And the final playoff matchup to speak of, the Eastern Conference winning Boston Bruins taking on the Ottawa Senators, who snuck into that final wildcard spot. Gary Cheevers will get the start for the Boston Bruins. Tuukka Rask was the original starter for this team. Cheevers took over the net about midway through the season. He's played 39 games with a .920 save percentage. That earned him the crease. Season series in this one, all 4 victories go to the Boston Bruins. Only one of those games needing overtime. So this is probably the, at least on paper, the most uneven series coming into these playoffs. Up front for the Boston Bruins, Phil Esposito is their goals leader, but their points leader will be found in their blue line. That is, of course, Bobby Orr. The lines for the Bruins, Phil Esposito centering Milt Schmidt and Cam Neely, Joe Thornton with Brad Marchand and Ken Hodge, Adam Oates with Johnny Busick and Rick Middleton, and Patrice Bergeron with Wayne Cashman and Terry O'Reilly. That stacked defensive core of Ray Bourque and Bobby Orr, Brad Park and Eddie Shore, and Zdeno Chara with Dick Clapper. And to the underdog of the East, the Ottawa Senators. They are led up front by Daniel Alfredson with 87 points, and their goal leader is Danny Heatley with 34. Both of them starring on that first line. Was originally centered by Jason Spezza, made the switch to Alexei Yashin centering that line. Spezza moved down to the second between Martin Havlat and Mark Stone. Mike Fisher centers Sean McEachern and Marian Hossa. Radek Bonk centers Magnus Arvidsson and Chris Neal. On defense, we'll see Zdeno Chara on both teams for this series, but in front of him, Chris Phillips and Eric Carlson. There's Zdeno Chara with Wade Redden, and Anton Volchenkov with Mark Borowiecki. In net for the Senators, there's going to be a change, and I'm going to make it right now. Oh, I forgot to make it. I made it already. Craig Anderson will get the start for the Ottawa Senators. Patrick Lalime was the starter for the majority of the season, but upon further review, it turns out he was the worst starter in the NHL out of anybody, playoffs or not. So that will earn Craig Anderson the net, not even necessarily based on his own play, but he'll get in there. He played 29 starts this season for a .908 save percentage for him. So it's not a massive upgrade for the Sens, but Lalim's had something like .891 through about 53 or so games played. I don't have that, didn't write that one totally down, but Patrick Lalime will get bumped from his starting spot for now. That's another series I'll keep an eye on, and if it goes south for Anderson, we'll see if Lalime can get in there, but it's going to be a tall hill to climb for the Senators anyway. Let's give them the goaltender that's not ranked the worst through the regular season and try to give them a shot. So that's it. Those are the playoff matchups. I'll make my quick predictions here for the East. The Pittsburgh Penguins second in the Metro versus third place New York Islanders. Islanders had the advantage in that one in the regular season, but the Penguins are going to take it in the playoffs. It's going to be Pens in 6 for the Metro winning Washington Capitals against the Montreal Canadiens, coming in surprisingly as a wild card team. Montreal led that series 2-1, a couple of games going to shootouts, and I think the high-powered offense of the Washington Capitals will fall to the better all-around play of the Montreal Canadiens. They will take that series. That's going to be a tough one. It's going to be Habs in 7. The Buffalo Sabres and the Detroit Red Wings. I mentioned when I first made the first video that I tried to keep goalies to only one team, the only exception really being Roberto Luongo and Marc-Andre Fleury. Detroit maybe would have had a claim for Dominik Hasek, but I gave him to Buffalo and left him on that team only, and I think that will be the demise in the first round of the Detroit Red Wings. Dominik Hasek is going to continue his dominant play, and he is going to shut down the Detroit Red Wings. The Buffalo Sabres will take that series in 5. And Bruins and Sens, arguably the most lopsided series coming into this. I'm going to make a even more specific prediction for that series just because I can. The Boston Bruins are going to win it in 5, but the Senators will win the first game, and they'll win it by more than 2 goals. The Bruins are going to be sleeping in the first game, expecting an easy series, and the Senators will pounce on them. Maybe even, do I even say the word? Yep, it'll be a shutout for Craig Anderson in Game 1. They'll win it about 3 or 4-0. How's that for a prediction? But Bruins win the series in 5. So that's it. That's the playoff preview video there. Just a quick little way to keep you up to speed here. If you didn't watch the big long stats and standings video, that is up. But it goes through every team after the regular season. But if those kind of videos aren't your style, this is just a little quick one here to get you up and ready to go. I believe the first games we're going to do is going to be Game 1 of the St. Louis Blues and Anaheim Ducks series. I'll try to keep everything as quick as I can, but, I'm only off 3 days of the week or however that works out, so at least I'll try to get 3 videos up a week if I'm really good, but, I've never been consistent, so no promises. But there it is. Thank you for watching. That's the playoff preview video done, and we'll get some playoff games ready to go soon.